Good morning, everyone, and welcome everyone to the July 23rd Advisory Council meeting for KAP. And happy to see all of you attending today virtually. And thankful for a little welcomed moisture here over the last day to the majority of Manitoba. And now I guess the smoke is kind of coming into the southern Manitoba, unfortunately. So good morning and thank you everyone for attending. And we have a full agenda today, including updates on KAP's activities, operations policy, as well as a guest presentation from the Canadian Federation of Agriculture on new federal policies. Just a couple notes that are up on the screen. Make sure that your name and district are underneath your on your Zoom link. You can just click name on and rename yourself so that both of those are reflected, so that when we're making motions, etc., that we've got the right information. If you want to speak during the meeting, please use the raise hand function so that we can recognize you. And pardon me. Please mute your microphone after you finish speaking so that we can limit, pardon me, the amount of feedback that's happening. If you're not a KAP member, please don't use the polling function if we have it in the resolution section. We do have some time for resolutions just until approximately 10 o'clock this morning if they're submitted. And this meeting is being recorded so that we can provide it later for members that haven't attended. It is truly an uneasy time for many farmers right now with the weather and particularly with the dry conditions. But I'll go into my remarks at this point in time, and then we will call the meeting to order after my remarks are done. This growing season has yet been another reminder of unpredictability and variability that we face here in Manitoba and right across Canada. Despite these challenges, farmers continue to move forward with resilience and adaptability. At KAP, we continue to raise these concerns with government partners to ensure farmers have had support and flexibility that they need and when we need it most. We work together with industry, as we saw last week, with an incredible collaboration in action as the Canadian Federation of Agriculture hosted our summer meeting here in Winnipeg. And I'd like to just now acknowledge the staff of KAP, Colin and Emily particularly, and the remainder of the team for their excellent work in hosting, and accolades to you and all the work that was done to host a very successful event. Delegates included farm and industry leaders across the country, as well as government, including Senator Mary Robinson, Senator Rob Black, Senator Todd Lewis, Manitoba's Minister of Agriculture, Honorable Ron Kostyshin, as well as Portage La Prairie's MLA Jeff Bariza were in attendance, to name a few. Ahead of the meeting, KAP welcomed a group to experience Manitoba's diverse and innovative agriculture during a pre-meeting tour day with the support of the Government of Manitoba. Guests chose from one of two concurrent tours, one being Emily's Innovation Farms in Grosse Isle, where participants saw firsthand how automation and efficiency are shaping the future of agriculture, or the remainder attended the University of Manitoba's Glenelly Research Station, where participants toured the livestock facilities and learned about ag research. Following the tours, group gathered at Princess Auto's head office in Winnipeg and learned more about the company's long-standing support of farm operations across the country. We then ended the day with a Manitoba-themed dinner at Fort White Alive's beautiful new Buffalo Crossing building to celebrate the strength of agriculture in our province. I want to thank our partners, sponsors, and guests for helping to make the tour day and a week such a success, including both teams at CFA and KAP. KAP also has been active in the media, raising awareness in key issues such as the drought conditions, tariff and trade barriers, both domestic and international, We remain committed to ensuring the farmers' voices are heard and that agriculture stays as part of the public conversation every day. Finally, I want to acknowledge the wildfires affecting parts of Manitoba. Our thoughts are with the communities, first responders, and families impacted. If you are able, I encourage you as producers to consider supporting the Canadian Red Cross, which is providing critical support on the ground. Okay, and with that, those in attendance would have received a meeting package, including an agenda. So if I can get a motion on the floor to approve the agenda that was circulated.
I would approve that, Jill.
Thank you. That's Les from District 2. Thank
Shannon
you.
will second.
Thank you, Shannon. And if you can just, when you make a motion and second, just say what district you're from as well. But we know where you're from, Shannon. So great. Thank you very much. And with that, were there any additions to the agenda or questions? I'm not seeing any. So are there any opposed to that motion? Okay, that is carried. We'll move on to the approval of the meeting minutes were also circulated. And I'll get a motion to approve those minutes as circulated.
I'll approve those. Mike Clark, Manitoba Beekeepers Association.
Thank you. And a second to that motion?
Kevin Peters, District 4.
Thank you, Kevin. Any questions, business arising from those minutes? I'm not seeing any hands up. I'll ask the question, are there any opposed to that motion? Okay, that is carried. So I again changed the schedule a bit and already went through my president's opening remarks. So we will actually go right into the membership update. And Shona, you're on the line?
Yes.
I'll maybe just get you to give some quick highlights for the period and any comments.
Thing. So this membership report, the numbers take us to the calendar date, end of June for this year. There are a few reports that are still remaining to come in, but overall we're looking pretty on par with membership numbers from last year. You will see the opt-outs being higher, and that is because we encouraged people to get, if they were going to choose to have a refund for this year, we asked that they get it in earlier so that we could have that information earlier in the year and try and avoid kind of the back and forth with receipts and then refunds coming back at the end as much as possible. And I've also included the overall numbers for last year's fiscal, just to give you an idea of where we're at as we kind of go into our last almost quarter at this point. I'd be happy to take any questions.
I'm just watching my screen as well. I'd maybe if Olivia or Colin is watching, do we have any questions? You can simply just put up your hand if you have a question on the membership. Give people a minute. I don't see any hands coming up, so thank you, Shona, for that. And with that, we will actually move on to General Manager and Policy Report. So I will hand it over to Colin and then Neil for a report from the office. Thank you.
Thanks, Jill, and good morning, everybody. Thanks for signing on today. We appreciate your engagement and being here today. So I'm just going to run through a few updates we have here in the office. We have a few new faces on the team here. I'll ask to introduce themselves. We have Leisha Hassanali and Marissa Zerba. So I'll get Alicia to go first and then Marissa to introduce themselves. Maybe talk about who you are, your quick background, and what your role is here with KAP.
Yeah, thanks so much, Colin. Hi, everyone. Leisha Hassanali. I am the new Communications and Stakeholder Relations Manager at KAP. I'm actually newish to Manitoba as well. Moved here in the fall. My partner is a professor at the University of Winnipeg. I grew up in Calgary. My background is actually as a journalist. Spent 10 years with CBC Radio in Calgary and in Toronto. And since for the last 10 years, I've spent it in public affairs, working at the University of Calgary for the engineering school, as well as university relations. And then I moved on to Rogers, where I worked for public affairs for Alberta and the Prairies. And for the last couple of years, I was working at LNG Canada on the export facility that just launched its first cargo off the coast of BC. I'm really excited to be working in agriculture and making my new home city of Winnipeg. Thanks so much for the warm welcome, everybody.
Thank you for that, Alicia. I'm Marissa Zerba. I'm the Finance and Operations Manager for KAP. I'm a chartered accountant or a CPA. I have over 10 years of experience with not-for-profits and for-profits. Most recently, I've worked with Arctic Co-ops and Frontiers North Adventures, as well as Economic Development Winnipeg. I'm really happy to be with KAP. I know there's been a lot of process improvements and changes when it comes to the accounting system, and I'm really hoping to expand on that and create further efficiencies with our new checkoff software. Thank you so much, folks, and it's great to meet you all.
Awesome. Thanks to you both. So Jill talked about the summer meeting, so I won't go into that too much, but it was really good to have a full week's worth of discussion. There was the day that KAP hosted, and then we also participated in some policy roundtables. The FPT, the Federal Provincial Territorial Agriculture Ministers meetings, were initially slated to be happening, but those have been postponed due to the wildfires into September. So we still held, CFA still held the event, and perhaps Brody, who's from CFA here today to present, can give any additional information that maybe we missed. But we had a good discussion around policy priorities for the ag ministers, and all of the feedback from groups across Canada was compiled and will be presented to them at a later date. So we still were able to make the week work. We had really good discussions and connected with a lot of folks from across the country, saying that some of the regional issues we see here in Manitoba are not unique always to Manitoba. Yes, we do have some particular ones, but there are a lot of shared issues across the country that we can sort of collaborate together on to advance. Regarding the weather, we've been hearing significant concerns in the Interlake region, particularly with dryness. I know the RM of Caldwell, as well as the RM of Armstrong, had some concerns there. So I will defer to Shannon when we go to the cross-provincial update, just to get an update from Fisher Branch and from her region up there. So we've met with the province, as we do on a regular basis during the growing season, just to get updates on weather trends and what's happening from their perspective. And it's an opportunity where we're able to provide that feedback along with some other folks like the Manitoba Forage and Grassland Association, Manitoba Beef Producers, just to talk about if there's any support needed from government, and so they know what's happening up there. We have a new checkoff software that we've secured a developer for, so that's currently in development. Shona and Marissa will be leading that process, so that's in the background will make our lives a lot smoother and easier in terms of processing that checkoff information. There's a lot of exciting things that there's some potential coming out of that that'll make engagement with producers much easier for everybody, as well as with our designated purchasers. So stay tuned for that sometime in the fall and into the winter. Additionally, at the last AGM earlier this year, we did have some changes to the bylaws, which allowed for some clarification on membership classes. So one of those is the associate membership category, which is something we plan to roll out for the new fiscal year coming up in November. That'll be an opportunity for businesses and others in the agriculture ecosystem who want to be involved and demonstrate their engagement with producers. And as a formal member of KAP, so we're going to be putting together a package that will outline what some of those benefits might be, how that would look, and something again we'll be putting out over the next few months. In terms of government relations and our advocacy work that we've been leading as a team here, Bill 47 in the last provincial legislature was around the interprovincial trade barriers and trade action plan. I'll let Neil talk about a bit. That was something that we had put out and kind of overview some of our priorities for trade and agriculture and how that can advance the provincial economy. And just generally speaking, our engagement with the provincial governments as well as other elected officials has been moving forward, and we're looking at expanding that a bit further into the fall. Cross industry, we've been really making an effort to engage with groups such as the Chamber of Commerce. So we did attend the Minister's Dinner, which Manitoba Pork was one of the headline sponsors, which was great to see agriculture there, as well as a breakfast with Premier Wap Kinew, hosted by the Chamber. I'll be attending as well next week. The U.S. Ambassador Pete Hextra will be coming up to Manitoba for a discussion there happening in Winnipeg. So that should be a good conversation talking about trade relations with the U.S. as well. There's coming up September 25th, the Leaders Forum on Growing the Economy. KAP has joined with a group of 12 other of the leading advocacy groups in the province to talk about how we can grow the economy, what the role of government is in doing that. So this is an event that's happened the past few years, but agriculture wasn't necessarily involved there. So we were very happy when Chris Lawrence at the Manitoba Heavy Construction Association approached us about joining. So very happy on that. That's a public event. Anybody's able to attend September the 25th. Tickets are available on the Heavy Construction Association's website if that's an interest. The Premier will be the headline speaker there, doing a discussion with Mary Agnes Welch from Probe Research. Additionally, we had Jill's been engaged with the U.S. Trade Council and some work there. We also did meet with the leader of the opposition, Abi Khan, as well as Mayor of Winnipeg, Scott Gillingham. And we did engage with a few other elected officials at the CFA meetings just in the last week. I know I spoke with MLA Shannon Corbett there, as well as Minister Bernadette Smith and a few others that were in attendance. On the labor file, there's been a lot of work around internationally educated vets and how do we get those individuals that are here with foreign trained credentials into their profession. So we're working with the provincial government as well as with the Manitoba Vet Medical Association and some other individuals, try and close that gap for where vets are needed. And there's been some positive first steps there and indications that there is interest from some of these individuals to be working in large animal care in rural communities. So that's something that we really are trying to ensure is the priority. We also have the Career Pathways portal. We're working with some other groups such as Emily, Protein MB, and Ag in the Classroom, as well as CARC, the Canadian Ag Human Resource Council, which will be a portal to try and attract individuals into agriculture, whether that's for on-farm jobs or other jobs within the ag ecosystem. Finally, the next big agenda, or the next big event we have on our horizon here, other than our golf tournament, which I'll remind you about, is the Midwest Legislative Conference. Alicia will be attending that next week in Saskatoon. I know there's a significant attendance from Manitoba's elected officials that will be there. So that will be legislators from across Canada, in the Midwest region, as well as in the U.S. So that'll be a great opportunity to engage with some of those individuals and talk about shared issues. This would be similar to SARL, which we attended the State Agri Leaders Ag Chair Summit, Iowa, back in January. This one's a little bit closer, so it works out nicely for us to attend that. Federal issues, I'll let Brody talk about those a bit, but we're really working collaboratively with CFA and taking their lead on a lot of these issues. But there's an initiative called Let's Grow Canada, which people may have seen recently. There's been, I believe, 20 different groups from across Canada, CFA, some commodity-specific groups, Canada Pork Council, others who've signed on to this. Essentially, there's a push that we're trying to do, led by CFA, to get all of the groups together and engage with the new government and talk about what are the priorities for agriculture, how do those fit with the new government's priorities, things like interprovincial trade and economic development and all of these different things, trade diversification. Again, I'll defer to Brody later on in this call, but yeah. So the last thing is our golf tournament's tomorrow. So I really hope to see everybody who's signed up. If you weren't signed up, we maybe can squeeze you in. Probably shouldn't say that because Emily might not like me to say that. But if anybody is last minute really wanting to attend, reach out and we can see if we can squeeze you in. That's happening tomorrow. Tee offs at noon at Larders at St. Andrews. Yeah, so I'll pass it to Neil to talk about policy. And if there's questions, please feel free to ask those maybe after Neil gives his update.
Okay, thanks, Colin. My name is Neil Van Overloop, the policy manager at KAP. I'll provide you with a brief policy update on some of the things that we've been working on in the last few months. So the trade action plan, we finished this document, we sent it to government, and we sent it to the Premier's office, to the Leader of the Official Opposition. We met with the Leader of the Official Opposition a few weeks ago to discuss this plan. Essentially, the plan highlights 4 key areas of importance. The first one being strengthen international engagement, 2, enhance domestic collaboration, 3, create an agricultural growth strategy, and 4, balance Manitoba's diverse trade interests. So under the context of tariffs, we sent government a letter regarding provincial legislative improvements. These recommendations focused on low-hanging fruit, change that is neither legislatively complex nor very costly. These recommendations touched on the Manitoba Building Code, service standards, off-road vehicle use, oversized load applications, and propane inspections, as well as Colin mentioned, interprovincial trade barriers. Bill C5 was recently passed by the federal government, as well as provincially, Bill 47. In the coming weeks, these regulations associated with the bills will be introduced, and we'll certainly be reviewing these regulations to better understand how these changes affect farmers. In May, the province announced economic development strategy. They sought stakeholders' feedback on this strategy. Our comments focused on the need for sector-specific strategies, particularly for agriculture, increasing export capacity, addressing farmland ownership challenges, removing interprovincial trade barriers, investing in water infrastructure, targeting core infrastructure needs, as well as increasing funding for research and innovation. As well, Colin mentioned that the FPT meeting was canceled. The CFA meeting went ahead last week. The FPT meeting, as Colin said, will take place at the beginning of September. But the province did ask stakeholders for feedback regarding the FPT meeting. We provided feedback to the department. We focused on a few issues such as BRM improvements, animal disease preparedness, market access, as well as sustainability. And in the last number of months, the province has been looking at improvements to the Disaster Financial Assistance Program. They released these improvements, they changed the regulations. These improvements have a positive impact on farmers. For example, previously, anyone making more than $2 million gross revenue was ineligible for disaster financial assistance. The changes increased that cap to $15 million, as well as they increased the maximum payment to $3 million. They also provided an update to the ownership requirement that will certainly benefit farmers. The next involves temporary foreign workers. The federal government has been looking at improving the temporary foreign workers program. They began consultations in 2020. They released further feedback documents in the last couple months. This includes issues affecting healthcare, wages and deductions, occupational scope, and transportation. We provided feedback to the government, and we'll certainly wait to see how these policy changes affect the program. Lastly, our website, our advocacy webpage, we've been updating that webpage, so please take a look. You'll find recent submissions as well as updates to our FAQ section on trade and rural crime. We've worked with Myers LLP in Winnipeg, where they provided responses to questions farmers often have about someone trespassing on their property. There's responses there, and hopefully this provides some clarity on what you can and can't do when it comes to trespassing. So I'll leave it there. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Great, thanks, gentlemen. I'm just take a minute here to see if anyone has a question for either of those two reports. And just in addition to Colin's remarks on meetings, the other meeting that did occur, and we had the majority of the ag commodity groups as well meet the Manitoba representative that'll be in the United States, Richard Madden, as well, and we met with him, and certainly look forward to working through KAP with him to provide some additional boots on the ground in Washington once he is up and running there. But it was certainly nice to have and meet with him, certainly with the commodity groups and industry here in agriculture. So I don't see any hands, Colin. So I see that Brody is on the call already. So without, I guess, further ado, I'd like to introduce Brody Berrigan from CFA, and he is Senior Director of Government Relations and Farm Policy. So the individual that I certainly have a lot of work with at the CFA, and certainly Colin and the team have a lot of discussions with Brody on the federal front. So welcome, Brody.
Thank you so much, Jill. I did actually have a question. Is it too late for me to get on your list for the golf tournament, Colin? I'd love to get in on that. I'm a little far away at the moment, but always up for a good industry golf tournament.
Well, Brody, if you're able to fly in by tomorrow morning, I'm sure we could find a spot for you.
Great, yeah. Maybe I'll drive the golf cart if nothing else. Listen, I just want to thank you for the invitation here today. Really appreciate it. It's always good to connect with members and give a bit of an update on some of the stuff that we're up to at CFA. And also just wanted to say right off the bat, what a great host KAP was last week in Winnipeg. I've had nothing but positive feedback on the whole week. So really wanted to extend our appreciation and thanks to Colin, the whole team, Jill, and everyone at KAP for their tremendous support and their excellent job hosting that event. Everything from the farm tours, which went really well, and the tours of Princess Auto, I think that was a highlight for a lot of people too, for sure. And the meetings and everything were very productive, very good feedback. And we were concerned going into it. I mean, I'm sure you folks were as well, right? I mean, obviously we don't want to be in a position where we're displacing hotel rooms and hotel capacity for people who need it, given the extreme situation that's happening, weather situation that's happening in the province. But at the end of the day, I think everything worked out very well there. The CFA, as you may or may not have heard, made a $5,000 donation to the Red Cross to support the disaster recovery efforts and relief efforts. And even though the ministers weren't in town for the event, you know, silver lining on something like this is we had a good opportunity to test run a new platform for our industry engagement and roundtable. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, but I just wanted to extend our deep appreciation for all the hard work that went into making that a very, very successful event. So thank you very much, everyone. For my time here today, and I really am kind of an open book. You know, Colin and I chatted briefly last week when I was in town about this update, and I think we agreed we'll keep it fairly open. Happy to answer any questions. Certainly we'll try to answer any questions that anybody on the advisory council has about anything that I'm talking about or not about to address. The CFA, of course, I mean, I think you all know very well who we are, the largest general farm organization. We represent all the provincial and territorial general farm organizations, as well as a number of national commodity associations. So quite a broad waterfront of issues. But happy to at least attempt to address any questions that folks have on the call. What I was thinking about doing here today with my time was I'll do a really quick recap on the board meeting, because I do think there was a couple of key things that happened that I think are important to acknowledge and celebrate. And then I thought what I could do is, and I apologize, Colin, in advance, this will be maybe a bit of a recap of some of the stuff we talked about last week in our general manager's update, but I thought I could do a bit of a deeper dive on some of the key policy issues that we're touching on at the CFA level. I think Neil did a great job in covering off, and you too, some of the things that I was going to touch on. So I'll do a light touch there because we're obviously working very closely on a number of fronts. But there were also a couple of areas where I think CFAs may be a little more doing a deeper dive on some of these things because of the federal touch points, and so I can elaborate there. Does that work? Yeah. Okay. So the board meeting. So we had our tours last week, which were great. The board meetings were on Tuesday, the 15th. I would say, you know, we started off with some general Q&A and remarks from the Minister of Agriculture, Minister Kostishin. I think that went very well. Talked a lot about the challenges, you know, some of the advances in agriculture in terms of technology and sustainability over his tenure. He also noted the challenges from a variety of different things: consumers, government, the environment. He asked our board what they would like to see in terms of current and future support for the government of Manitoba. You know, I think our members asked how the Minister of Agriculture gets space and time in cabinet meetings. So how do you really elevate the agriculture sector in those cabinet discussions? I think that's a provincial issue, but it's a federal issue too, and something that I'll talk about in a second as part of our Let's Grow Canada initiative. But he did note, you know, and it was interesting to sort of hear that agriculture is often taken for granted by governments across Canada, but that it's, you know, and this won't surprise you, it's his job to ensure that agriculture gets the kind of voice that it needs around that cabinet table. Jill provided a regional issues update. I won't go into that, obviously. We had Don Moores, who is a principal at the Temple Scott Associates. That's basically the firm that we use to help us with some of our lobbying in Ottawa. Every fall we have a lobby day where all of our members come to town, and we do a sort of a coordinated advocacy outreach day with members of parliament, including MPs, senators. We also try and hit officials and politicians' offices, their office staff, to try and you know, advance some key messages and echo some key recommendations all at one time. TSA supports us in that, but Don was in town last week to give us an overview of the recent election, sort of what were some of the key variables that led to the re-election of the Liberal Party, but really a new Liberal government under Prime Minister Carney. And I think that won't surprise you. You're all very well aware just the number of ways in which a new Carney government has tried to distance themselves from the previous Trudeau government, you know, immediately scrapping the consumer carbon tax, really pushing profile, pushing, advancement of infrastructure projects, reducing barriers, setting a new tone with negotiations south of the border, et cetera, et cetera. I think one of the things that Don talked about was that there's likely to be a budget this fall, possibly as early as September. And so that it's a really important time to get agriculture's voice heard at the federal government level. And obviously that's something that we're focused on as well. I'll talk about that in a few minutes as well, in terms of our pre-budget submission and some of the highlights that we're going to be making there. Talked a lot about the Government of Canada launching a red tape reduction process. So really focusing on reducing regulatory burden in supporting the objectives of competitiveness and productivity and efficiency, and how we want to make sure that we're represented in that process as well. He did say that while it is a minority government, fully expects there to be at least a good year's worth of runway for the current Carney government before there's going to start to be a lot of pressure. He's going to be looking kind of at the polls in about a year from now, 6 months to a year, to see how things are trending. If they are still garnering very strong support in the polls, it's possible that the Liberal government may trigger an election to try and get that majority. If the support is soft or close, then they'll probably continue to ride it out. So we have to sort of see how that progresses over the next several months. In terms of some of the major roadblocks that Don Moore's talked about, really talked a lot about Trump, obviously, Indigenous buy-in for infrastructure projects, and simply capacity. So they have a high level of ambition on some of these major infrastructure projects and to advance some of these key federal priorities. So it will be difficult to advance all of these initiatives concurrently, particularly when they're in the process of a federal cost-cutting exercise. So in addition to the regulatory and red tape reduction process, they've launched an internal review, a program review, seeking operational cuts across the federal public service. So trying to really push an aggressive agenda while at the same time trimming back on your capacity is going to be a potential challenge for this new Carney government. I presented our proposed submission to the federal budget, which really cut across a number of different priority areas, but the overarching theme was around trying to put in the window some low cost, no cost initiatives that we think would advance the interests of the sector, but that would be more aligned with what we're hearing in Ottawa, which is that there's simply no money. So not only is the government seized with reducing internal trade barriers and advancing a number of major infrastructure projects, they've also made some very big and expensive commitments around our defense budget. So meeting that NATO spending commitment. And so we've been told in very clear and in certain terms that there is not going to be a lot of money in this budget. So they're looking for stuff that we can do, very low cost, regulatory in nature, legislative in nature, that sort of thing. So we have outlined about 7 or 8 priorities there, all very similar to the things that we put forward in our platform priorities, as well as a couple of new ones. And we also appended to that a list of specific regulatory initiatives that we think the government could pursue that are in line with that overall level of ambition and will have meaningful results for the sector, but aren't necessarily going to be seen as tone deaf because they're, seeking a high level of ambition from a cost perspective. Some of the feedback that we got when we presented that budget submission, though, was there are a lot of farms across Canada that are experiencing some challenging financial situations, and we can't dismiss that. And it's true when you look at the StatsCan data. I think net operating costs have gone up. Overall net income has declined. a lot of financial pressure as a result of interest rate and debt servicing costs for farms, which have actually gone up substantially over the past couple of years. And so we cannot dismiss the fact that, you know, there is a strong need out there, and we need to make sure that farmers are getting the support that they need. So we're revising a bit our submission to reflect some of that overall context, as well as the need to reflect the agriculture sector as an industry that's worth investing in. It shouldn't be viewed as an expense, but it should be viewed as an investment for the government of Canada. And that's very much in line with the ambition that we're outlining in our joint industry open letter to the Carney government, the Let's Grow Canada initiative, which really talks about the tremendous economic potential in the agriculture sector. We've estimated, and this is an aspirational target, upwards of an additional $100 billion in GDP growth over the next 10 years that could come out of the agriculture sector with the right investment, streamlining of regulations, and investment in innovation. So we're trying to straddle, to be perfectly blunt, that fine line of, you know, articulating that there is still a high level of need and making a case for investment, but not necessarily pushing hard for really high cost budget items, because we just know that there's not going to be a lot of reception for that. So that was a really good discussion at the board table, as well as when we had our discussion at the general managers meeting. Next on the board, I'll just run through the agenda, and then I'll pause before I go into the deeper dive on some policy stuff in case anybody has any questions on any of the things, because I realize I am going fairly quickly. We gave a bit of an overview of some recent meetings as well as some upcoming meetings. Some of those things have already been touched on by Jill, Colin, and others, but we also talked about the World Farmers Organization. So the CFA and KAP, by virtue of its membership and partnership with the CFA, are members of the World Farmers Organization. And this is the largest farmer representative organization internationally. And we really leverage our membership in the World Farmers Organization to try and drive some key messages at the UNFCCC, so on climate-related discussions, and at the World Trade Organization. And particularly at the WTO, I would say, this is critical right now as the world is retrenching in this policy of increased isolationism and increasing trade barriers and protectionism. And we have a seat at the Civil Society Advisory Body directly across the table from the Secretary General of the World Trade Organization. And that's really an opportunity through the World Farmers Organization where we can advance the messages around the need to reduce non-tariff barriers to trade, supporting rules-based trade, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we did talk a little bit about some recent engagement with the World Farmers Organization, and happy to talk about that if anybody has any questions there. We've also been engaged through other G7 colleagues, so the farm group leaders, our counterparts in all of the G7 countries. This is the second year that we have engaged an informal network with them on the margins of the G7, which of course was hosted by Canada this year. We put out a joint statement in, I guess that would have been in, gosh, whatever that was, June. These dates and meetings are all blending together, sort of mid-June. Joint statement with the farm group leaders, again, trying to present a united front across the farm groups internationally of those G7 countries around the need for, in particular, reducing non-tariff barriers to trade and advancing rules-based trade, while protecting some sensitive industries like our supply managed commodities. So that's been a very effective collaboration, I would say. And in fact, we just heard back from the Prime Minister's office on that joint statement yesterday, landed in my inbox. We've been engaged in a lot of bilateral discussions with the American Farm Bureau Federation. We went down to the convention last year. We're looking at participating again this year. And that has been, I know Jill referenced Sarl, our engagement and partnership with the Farm Bureau in the United States, I would say, has been our greatest asset in the current trade dispute with the United States. When we went down there last January and we sat down with Sylvie Duval and the executive, before. So this was before, you know, the quote unquote Liberation Day, when Trump, in April, when Trump was on, you know, the lawn with his list of tariffs. It was really clear that we had a strong ally in the Farm Bureau. They absolutely were receptive to the message around open trade, reducing barriers, North American economic integration. And they were among the first stakeholders in the United States to speak openly against the current trade agenda of the current US government. And I think a lot of that, I mean, obviously we can't attribute that to any one particular thing, but I think just having a strong voice south of the border speaking for this in the same interests that we have in Canada, I think is a very, very, very important partnership to continue to foster. We're going to be sitting down with them and our Mexican counterparts in Italy in about a month or so, a little bit over a month, at the end of September, on the margins of the North American European Union Agricultural Conference. Same thing, to try and really drive towards some consensus around some priority key messages, and maybe even have a joint statement across North America. It'll be in the context of that NAEU, not necessarily in the context of a CUSMA review or renegotiation, but a strong signal nonetheless that there is close cooperation and a need for close integration between our three North American agricultural communities. So that's a big one. Also coming up, I talked about the NAU, the WTO is going to be a hop in place over the next couple of years. We've got the public forum in this September, and we've got the next ministerial conference in Africa next year. And we've been deepening a lot of our engagement with Mexico through the Agribusiness Working Group, which is a long-standing joint government and industry, Canada and Mexico partnership. So exploring some opportunities to diversify trade with that country. Next on the agenda, we had 3 senators. So all of whom I know you're all very familiar with. Senator Black, Senator Lewis, and Senator Robinson gave us their perspectives on this evolving role of the Canadian Senate. Talked a lot about not just the importance of engaging with them in the Senate and with the Agriculture Committee in the Senate, but getting out there to lobby and talk to other committees and other senators who aren't necessarily as familiar with the agriculture portfolio. And so that was a kind of a key message, I think, and something that we'll be certainly taking to heart over the course of the next several weeks and months as we ramp up our advocacy with this new Carney government. There was a governance committee update and a membership fee structure update. We had a presentation from Marnie Wood, the COO of the Canadian Centre for Agricultural Wellbeing. She really talked about, and this was much less positive in one sense, but the increasing rate of mental illness across the agriculture sector. And she also outlined a number of different initiatives and tools to support producers. So that was really, I think, a helpful conversation, but also an important reminder that this is something we need to be very focused on going forward. It's easy to get lost in, you know, the files, the issues, trade, risk management, labor, etc. But underlying all of that is the mental health and well-being of our producers across Canada, and certainly in in Manitoba. And so Marnie was there to remind us of that, which I think was a really good discussion. We had an update from the Chief Commissioner of the Canadian Grain Commission. So David Hunt was in to provide us an update, talked about 3 areas of focus in the future: sustainable funding and operations, technology and scientific innovation to advance program delivery, and fair grain transactions in a competitive grain sector. Pretty good discussion there. There was a presentation. Happy to share that. I think Colin and Jill, you have that as part of the board package, but if folks are interested, I think that's a good one and particularly relevant for your colleagues across Manitoba. I provided a policy, well, sorry, Jill, our chair of the policy committee, provided a policy committee update, and I just provided a bit more detail on some of the specific files, which I'll go into in a few minutes. We announced that the CFA is entering into a formal partnership through an MOU with the National Circle for Indigenous Agriculture and Food, the NCIAF. This is great. We're really, really excited about this. Really about better understanding and acknowledging the important role that the Indigenous population plays in agriculture historically and in present day Canadian agriculture right now, formalizing that through the MOU. And we did in fact get the NCIF as a formal signatory to our Let's Grow Canada joint open letter to the Prime Minister, which was a great addition. Talked a little bit about the budget, and then we went in camera. So that was sort of the overall board meeting, which I just thought was a useful way to recap some of those key things. We also, as part of the in-camera discussion, and I absolutely have to put an exclamation mark on this, signed the Canadian Pork Council as a new member of the CFA. This has been a long-standing effort to try and get pork back into the fold of CFA at the federal level. And that was formally approved and announced at the board meeting. So we're obviously very, very, very excited about that partnership. And so now we're just in a process of like the onboarding process, you know, making sure that they're not only, you know, it's the nitty gritty of like signed up on our distribution and our email lists, but also profiled on the website and access to all of the information and services that we offer at the federal level. I'm going to take a deep breath, pause, see if there's any questions, and then I could go a little bit deeper in a couple of things if there's time. I wanted to talk about the Let's Grow letter because I think that's really important. I could talk a little bit about labor too, because that's a big one at the federal level. Any comments or questions?
I'm not seeing any hands, Brody. Colin, do you see any hands up or individuals waving in the background?
I'll keep plowing ahead, but feel free, like just anybody raise your hand. Like I much prefer it when it's more of a discussion, you know what I mean? And I don't want you to be bored by anything I'm saying. So if there's an area in particular that you'd like to dig into, or if you have any questions, please feel free. On the policy specific side, which is a bit more my wheelhouse, really sort of three priorities that we've talked about going forward. So the first is regulatory modernization. Like the government of Canada has sent a very, very clear signal, much have many of the provinces, including in Manitoba, that there's an opportunity right now to streamline regulations, to support productivity, to support efficiency, and to support our overall competitiveness. They launched this red tape reduction review, as I mentioned previously. That wraps up on September 8th. So all departments across the government of Canada, the federal departments, have until September 8th to articulate their list of specific areas, regulatory areas and regulations that they want to make some amendments to streamline them. We're feeding into that process through our joint budget submission, which includes a list of specific regulatory amendments that we're seeking. But we're also going to be going back out to all of our members, including KAP, shortly, asking if there's anything else that they are aware of that they would like to put in the window to support that. And then we're going to link that to some of those broader kind of objectives around, like I said, innovation, supporting innovation, attracting investment, increasing our productivity and efficiency, et cetera, et cetera. And then we'll be feeding that into that, to that overall process. So that is one area. The second is trade and the CUSMA review. We're calling it the CUSMA review because on paper, that's still what we're looking at. Technically, we're still on track for the formal review of the trilateral free trade agreement that we have with the US and Mexico for July 2026. That is the date, the formal deadline that's on paper right now. Having said that, Canada, following the G7, Canada set a deadline for a new US trade deal by August 1st. It's not really clear what this is going to look like or whether this will include Mexico at this stage. The indications that we have are that, and we've had some discussions with the chief agriculture negotiator in the government of Canada, if Canada is successful in securing an agreement, it is more likely to be a bilateral one with the US and a framework agreement. So not a full-fledged free trade agreement, but sort of more along the lines of what Canada or what the US announced with the UK. And just, I think yesterday or today announced with Japan. And before that, I think there was another one with Korea, South Korea, or Vietnam, sorry. So there's a few of these kind of framework agreements that have come out. We don't know what that's going to look like. And we do not know if this is going to include some kind of entrenched baseline across the board tariff. It is certainly looking like it is trending in that direction. We have been continuing to push the government of Canada to not give up on free trade with the United States. It is absolutely fundamental to our economic well-being. And, you know, even a baseline 10% tariff would be catastrophic compared to where we are right now in terms of free trade. So continuing to push really hard on that, but I'm not super encouraged, to be honest with you, and blunt, by the trend line we are seeing in some of these new framework agreements that are being announced between the UK, the US, and other countries around the world. The 35% tariff that Trump proposed on non-CUSMA compliant goods, it's really hard to get a read on what that actually means. So we already have that 25% tariff. There is already a 25% tariff on non-CUSMA compliant goods. That's already in effect. Talked about bumping that up to 35%. That's not really going to affect a lot of the vast majority of agricultural commodities or inputs that are crossing the border right now. About 98.4% of Canadian products that enter the US duty-free, only about 1.6% are facing these non-CUSMA compliant tariffs. And what does CUSMA compliant mean? There are a number of criteria to be deemed CUSMA compliant, which means it originating in one or all of those countries or meets a certain threshold for non-originating material. But like I said, the vast majority are currently not subject to those high tariffs right now. Our main concern is that if and when we do announce a new framework agreement with the US, it will include some kind of new baseline tariff at whatever that rate might be. So something that we're continuing to monitor very closely, obviously. The third priority is the next FPT framework, and in particular, a risk management program. So we were supposed to obviously have that in-person FPT last week. It was canceled for obvious reasons, and you know you're all very well aware of that. The ministers are planning to meet in person in Winnipeg in September, from what I understand. I think Colin and Jill probably know a lot more about that than I do, but our understanding is that that meeting is going to happen. We have an agreement right now with the minister's office federally that CFA and potentially some of our other national non-members, but agriculture organizations are going to be making a joint presentation to the ministers that will be effectively a readout of what we talked about last week in Winnipeg when we had our own industry roundtable. So right now we're taking a lot of the information that we heard and recommendations that came out of that discussion, which was really rich, I thought. And we're going to be synthesizing that into a presentation, and we're going to be delivering it to the ministers this fall. Risk management, the only thing that really got discussed from what I understand last week, because there was sorry, I should say that there was an actual phone call of ministers, so they had a virtual meeting, was agri-stability. And my understanding is that they've agreed to implement the changes that were originally announced by the Carney government. Actually, it was former Minister Cody Boyce who announced them. So that's positive. But we've heard that their plans are that next summer's FPT, which will be held in Halifax, will be focused a lot more on risk management programs. And so we have about a 6-month window in front of us to solidify our direction ahead of the next summer's FPT meeting. We're going to be doing some work internally within the CFA along with our members. I know Neil is going to be very engaged in this, setting up some working groups focused on agri-recovery, disaster financial assistance, crop and livestock insurance, and agri-stability enhancements, further enhancements as part of our deeper dive on BRM. So we shared as part of our board package a bit of a critical path on how we're going to get from today to next summer, when we're hoping to have some more formal advice to prevent to ministers across those 3 thematic areas. The last thing I'm going to touch on super quick is the Let's Grow Canada initiative that was alluded to earlier. So the purpose of this initiative was to send a strong signal to a new federal government, the Carney government, early in the mandate, that agriculture needs to be more front and center in this government's agenda. For too long, it has been played second fiddle to other industries, oil and gas, energy, autos, mining, etc. And we tried to make the case in an open letter to the Prime Minister and members of Cabinet why we feel agriculture needs to be a priority because of our tremendous growth potential and some of the areas that we think the government needs to focus on in order to make that happen. We have a very, very broad coalition signed on to it, about 30 industry associations, including some CFA members and many who are not CFA members. So a very broad-based coalition signed on to the letter. We sent it to the Prime Minister on Monday, and we circulated it broadly through our social media channels that afternoon. And so far, it's gotten a lot of attention, I would say, on social media. We have a couple of interviews lined up over the course of the week to talk about it, but really want to try and hammer home the importance of really emphasizing the agriculture sector and making that a feature in the new government mandate as a key industry to drive our economic and GDP growth over the coming years. And so that is the intent behind that open letter, and would encourage you to have a read. If you haven't already, you can find it on our website or on social media. Let's Grow Canada, it's called. And certainly if you have any questions about that, don't hesitate. I'll stop there, but happy to take any questions. And if there's anything else anyone wants to talk about, lay it on me.
Thanks, Brody. I'll hand it over to Colin to see if he can watch the screen to handle the requests if there's any questions.
Just taking a look here. Do we have any hands up? Oh, I see Jake has his hand up, and then David Rourke. So
perfect, thanks. Go ahead, David. Well, David first, and then Jake.
You're muted, David, if you are trying to speak.
Okay, here we go. I'm gonna not go to video because I'm got maybe not a good connection today, but I just wanted to get some reaction. I'm a 69-year-old farmer, and I just finished a PhD called In Search of Net Positive Carbon Grain Farming. And in that work, and part of the reason I did that work is I think a lot of dollars could be better used in terms of tackling climate change and growing the farm and getting a lower carbon footprint. And I know that's not the highest priority right now, but it won't go away. It's real. And I used to develop a tool called BERT by E. Farmers won't change if they don't believe in it. If E is for the economics, R is the regulatory, T is a technology we can actually use. It's scalable for our own region. And then you have to divide it by the energy of the farmer physically and mentally to make that change. So I interviewed 12 innovative farmers that are that believe that there's a problem and it needs to be addressed, and they're trying to address it on their own farms. And I came up with four different categories of BMPs. One is a no regret BMP. It's like zero till in Saskatchewan. It would cost you money if you couldn't do it, and it fixes carbon and has a good outcome. The next one is a neutral BMP. That, in my mind, would be something like renewable diesel on farm. Doesn't affect the food, but it's relatively easy to do. The next category is what I call sacrifice BMPs. Somebody has to pay if we need to put them into place. And perhaps the best use of money is to pay for research to make those BMPs become no regret BMPs. The other way to pay, of course, is if you ban a certain practice, then somebody's got to enforce it. And the third way to pay is a continual government or public subsidy to promote a practice that doesn't pay directly on the farm. And then the fourth category is what I call dead end BMPs. And I'm afraid that 4Rs is, in my mind, in that category because it doesn't get us to net zero. It gets us more efficient fertilizer use. And then I've got 5 different categories of how we look at different nitrogen alternatives. And they include using, some of these are pretty straightforward. Using more legumes, reducing tillage. A lot of companies are spending a lot of money on bugs in a jug, and I've done some replicated small plot research on that, and there are some hope there. There's some bunch of green end initiatives, and most of them are going to just be expensive, so I don't see those being really good. There's one called Lightning In, and I'm not sure that it's as real as the promoters would like it to be, but if it is, that's great. And then Ag Canada is working on a nitrogen fixing non-legume, and they have found a third pathway that's been worked on for 60 years, but they've got some progress and some patents, and I think there's some real opportunities there, and they're definitely underfunded for the significance that they could have. So I just wanted to bring that forward. Those are probably some things that you may not have considered or heard of before. So I think I also have a sustainable farm index, and I think there's no reason that we can't kind of grow and have a lower footprint, and that be an advantage on the trade front as well as in our soils directly. Thanks.
Yeah, great information. David, did you have a question specifically for Brody?
Well, I guess given
You're breaking.
Maybe you're breaking up. Maybe if we
that Trump
go...
is pulling out of the Paris Accord, and a lot of there's just any reaction from Brody would be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to speak to that, Jill. Like, I think, so thank you for raising it. That's an entire area that I didn't cover, but it is an important one. So we just spent about 10 years, basically, trying to make the case for the government of Canada to move away from sticks and move more towards carrots when it comes to sustainability and the climate discussion. And also to reposition agriculture not as a contributor to climate change, but as an asset to fighting climate change. And so it took a long time, and I'm not even sure that we succeeded, although I would argue we did make we did gain some ground in reframing the whole narrative and discussion when it comes to agriculture and climate. It was painful, and I think we have turned the page on that. However, as you alluded, we don't have a good, clear sense at this stage how the new federal government is planning to position itself when it comes to the environment and sustainability initiatives. From our perspective, CFA, our attention right now, just so you know, is focused on soil, water, resilience, adaptation, severe weather events, and food security, generally speaking. So really pushing discussions around access to innovation and productivity enhancing tools, which also support sustainability objectives. Data as a key input into supporting that. So better data, better monitoring, better reporting, financial incentives for climate and mitigation adaptation in particular, and research. This is an area that we think we can focus on that will be receptive, that's aligned with what our members are telling us on how they want to have those discussions around sustainability, and is more likely to be well received by a government that is like zeroed in on sort of productivity and competitiveness. So we're trying to reframe this discussion as part of that broader agenda, but not lose sight of the good stuff and the hard fought battles over the past several years. And yes, the CFA is still participating annually in the climate conferences. We're planning to go to Brazil again this year, to continue to carry that flag on, agriculture as a contributor to climate objectives, not a detractor or an inhibitor, and to continue to work with the government on finding programs that will be sending the right incentives for farmers to continue to invest in better soil health, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of what we're focused on right now. We still have we have a manager of sustainability and regulatory affairs whose job it is to focus on these issues. So it will continue to be a priority of the CFA. We're admittedly trying to figure out how to wedge it into the current government's kind of mandate and focus and priorities, but we have not lost sight of the importance of this from a long-term sustainability of the agriculture sector perspective.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Brody. Go to the next question, Jake, and then I have Harold Froese from Manitoba Egg Farmers after that.
Thanks, Jill. Hi, Brody. Jake here. I was just wondering if you could touch on, there was the presentation at summer meetings there from like the APP administrators. So you had CCGA. Obviously, a lot of our members use that program, and I was just talking to Colin on the sidebar about some opportunity there for red tape reduction. I think it'd be a benefit for our members to hear that. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thanks for flagging that. So APP is Advanced Payment Program. I know you all know that program very well. There's two sides to what we're recommending on that front. So the first one is really on the interest-free threshold. So we are continuing to push for a higher interest-free threshold to support the program. Currently, it's set at $100,000 in the legislation. The Government of Canada recently temporarily increased that interest-free threshold to $250,000 for the program year. And we have been calling for the past couple of budget cycles for two things. One, set that new floor at $350,000. We think it more accurately reflects the demand out there and the need for access to low interest or interest-free cash. Again, going back to, the very high pressure on operating costs for farmers right now and the high debt servicing costs. And so the APP is a really critical program for that. The second thing we're asking for there is sort of a set it and forget it. So the government has kind of this up and down, like they'll temporarily increase the interest threshold, then it snaps back to the legislated 100,000, then they'll increase it again, then it snaps back, then they increase it even further, then it goes down. And from an operational perspective, both for administrators and for farmers, that uncertainty around what that level is going to be makes it harder for them to budget And so we're just simply saying, increase the threshold, leave it alone, maybe index it to inflation. There's a number of different ways that you could do that. The Farm Input Price Index is one. You could simply have a measure of inflation as another, and then leave it alone. The other thing, though, that you're alluding to, and I'm just bringing up my notes here, is the Government of Canada recently changed its policy for administration of the program. And one of the intentions of that was to streamline processing for low-risk producers. However, it's actually having the unintended effect of reclassifying all new clients to the APP program. So anybody new that an administrator signs up right now is automatically being classed as a high-risk client. And there's quite a bit more admin burden associated with that and increased time lag associated with processing those applications. So it's putting upward pressure on administrators, including CCGA, but also the Agriculture Credit Corporation, of which I'm on their board of directors, I should note for transparency's sake. It's putting upward pressure on these administrators to administer that program because they now have a lot more burden, admin burden, to actually process applications. The credit threshold has also been increased. It used to be for low-risk producers under 100,000, no defaults or had no history of non-sufficient funds, low risk, move them through. You can get those applications processed in a matter of hours, if not days. And now it's taking weeks because of this new blanket lending policy that the Government of Canada has instituted. And so that was a little bit what Dave Gallant from CCGA and Scott Clark from Ag Credit Corp were talking about during our policy summit when they were referring to the APP. So we're collectively lobbying the Government of Canada to think twice about some of that new, the aspects of that new lending policy, and to really redefine how they're categorizing risky clients. Because in most instances now, it's just not making any sense. This kind of blanket high risk for all new applicants is goofy. When people have good credit ratings and good credit histories, there's no reason why we need to be classifying them that way and applying a higher thresholds and increased burden. Thanks for the question though, Jake, and thanks for your participation last week. It was good to see you.
Great.
Thanks.
Good comments. Thanks, Brody, for that. We'll move on to Harold.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Jill. Brody, really appreciate your presentation. I really enjoyed it. I just have a couple of compliments to make, not necessarily a question. The first one being, I'm dating myself, but having been there when the Canadian Pork Council left CFA was a sad day for many of us. And I just want to applaud CFA and everybody that worked so hard to bring them back in. With the trade barriers that pork and also canola are facing right now, it's imperative that we have them as part of CFA. So kudos to everybody that did that. The other thing is I applaud the efforts to on the trade front. One thing I noticed particularly is a CFA connection with the American Farm Bureau. And I think that's super positive because they are often more associated with the Republican Party, so we're more likely to have the ear of the current administration as opposed to the NFU, which is more Democrat oriented. And in addition to that, continuing to meet with all the groups within the G7 and the NAEU, the only way I think we're going to solve the current trade circus, and I'll use that term generously, is for farm groups around the world to continue to connect on the basic principles of trade that CFA espouses so well. And we can't lose sight of that with all the rhetoric that's out there. So applaud your efforts and encourage you to continue the good work. Thank you.
Thanks, Harold. I'm looking to see, we do have a few more minutes. If anyone has any other questions. just checking, in the absence of any, there's no resolutions today, so we do have a few more minutes, Brody, for some questions. If there's anything that comes up, I'm sure Brody will do his best to answer questions. I think you're off the hook, Brody. Thank you very much for the report. And it was very insightful, in particularly on those BMR discussions on the APP program. You know, looking at what the actual intent of that was, it certainly has or is continuing to transform to what producers are using it for. So it's certainly great to have comments from producers to make sure that that program really helps producers out almost in more of a cash flow, you know, throughout the course of the year compared to its original intent many years ago. So.
Thanks for that, Jill. And thanks again for the invitation. Really appreciate it. We've got lots of work ahead of us, I would say, this fall. It's going to be a busy fall, but we really rely on our members and our partners to kind of help us move that yardstick forward. And KAP is a tremendous partner. Really want to thank Neil, who's been tremendous over the course of the last few years since I've been working with the CFA on all of our policy files. Really rely on his advice and support. And Leisha, it's been great to work with her, and everybody else in the KAP team. Of course, you, Jill, on our policy committee and around the board table. You have a really important voice. People really respect your opinion on all of these issues that we're discussing. And Colin, it's been a great working with you over the past several months. You're doing a great job, and look forward to continuing that partnership. Thanks, everyone.
Great. Thank you very much, Brody. So on that note, we will be moving on to, I guess, the cross-provincial. Oh, sorry, Les, you're.
Have hand up.
Okay. Did you have was a question for Brody, or did you have a question for?
In view of resolutions, that there is none, I wondered about an update on past resolutions that are sitting with an open file. So District 2 had put forward 2 resolutions, and they weren't put into the sunset category. Neil would probably be able to comment on this, but you had told me, Jill, that the file was still open. So and that's a year ago, so I'm wondering how progress has been made on that open file. Is that a fair question?
I guess at this point in time, we do have you have access to the website for all of the updates for what is happening on files. I know that Neil has done a great amount of work on having any of our updates that have happened on those files. I don't know which file you're particularly speaking about. If you maybe could specify exactly what resolution you wanted to comment on.
Well, the salinity, District 2 had only put 2 resolutions forward, and that's a couple of years ago, and they were passed, and then Neil had given me an update, and the file was open, that there was still progress that happened there. So
okay. Colin, maybe if you just want to briefly update on the work, specifically on I guess you're referring to drainage regulations, and maybe touch base on maybe future meetings that we would be having with the Department of Agriculture. It's certainly something that we discuss with the department, as well as Environment Department on an ongoing basis. And maybe, Colin, if you just want to maybe just touch base on what we have been doing and continue to do in the future on that file.
just one more comment, Jill, sorry to interrupt there, but I just wondered if there was a land use committee. There's been no meetings about that, and I guess I'm not on any other committees, but it doesn't seem like we're getting the grassroots input to all these committees. But anyway, I'll thank you for your time. I'll listen here.
Okay, great. And Colin, maybe if you just want to update on the process of the new committee structure, and that, you know, we have meetings with producers to get input when requested, and certainly that has not changed currently. Go ahead, Colin.
Thanks, Jill. So yeah, maybe I'll also get Neil to provide any other information if I miss anything. But firstly, on the drainage regulations and those associated items, we have met with the province, and I know Neil has engaged with them. It sounds less like you may have had some discussions with Neil already about this, so I'm not certain what else to add, but I know that's an ongoing item that we have brought up with them and continue to have on the radar. Just more broadly, though, I guess when it comes to the committees, so those changes had been made. I can't recall specifically when, but the committees will be held sort of on more of an ad hoc basis as needed, which we've been doing for quite some time now. So as the issues do arise and those meetings are needed, we will have them. And I know Neil does maintain a very open door when it comes to individuals that are looking to have meetings. So if you are having particular items that you think a meeting would be warranted, definitely would be good to connect with him and you know, explain sort of what you're looking for and what would be a good what you'd like to sort of get on the agenda, and we would be happy to work with you on something like that. But maybe I'll just get Neil to provide any further context that maybe I missed there.
Yeah, as Colin said, water management is a high priority for us. We've met with government many times about this issue. This is an ongoing issue that we continue to raise. We are going to update our website on the advocacy page and post resolutions from the last 5 years. So every resolution that passed at advisory council or was referred to committee will be up there with an update on what has happened, what we've done, what has been the outcome. So producers can see exactly what happened to that resolution. In terms of consultations, seeking feedback from producers, the feedback that we provided to government, I reach out to producers, ask questions, hear their feedback, to get an understanding, okay, where they stand on the issue before I, send submissions to government, and all the submissions that I send, the executive reviews as well, before they go out.
So just further to that as well, I'd like to just, highlight the engagement with the executive as well as the commodity groups and other producers. So we are really trying to maintain the producer perspective in everything we submit. This is the process that we've followed in the last few years for sure. And as Neil mentioned, sort of alluded to the changes to the website. We're kind of looking at this as a resolution tracker, is sort of what we're referring to the project as. And Neil and Olivia are working on this. It's a very large undertaking. They're going through quite a few previous resolutions. And I think that it will be something we'll sort of roll out and launch to our members. Something to tie into that too, as I mentioned earlier, on the new checkoff software we have. Another component to that is going to be able to enhance how we communicate with producers. So we'll be able to roll all of our contact information into one place. So we'll have a better way to engage with producers. And we're increasing those in-person events for the upcoming year, definitely in our plans as well. So I think all that to say is really pushing forward on enhanced transparency for resolutions and how we're sort of developing policy as KAP, and then as well meeting producers in their districts, in their own backyards to try and make sure that we give people both the virtual, these types of meetings as engagement opportunities, through submissions when Neil's emailing people for feedback, and then also, of course, in-person meetings. Those are my favorite. I would much rather be, face to face with somebody having a cup of coffee personally. But I know that moving to the virtual format is, it does allow for more participation in many instances, especially as folks are busier. We can get people from somebody from Swan River is here, as well as somebody from Winkler, for example. So it's a lot closer to log on to the screen than it is sometimes to go in person. So, but that's what we also want to maintain with the AGM, is that's that point for the in-person engagement. And we do plan again to do policy roundtables in the afternoon for the AGM next year, just as we did this year. So that'll be another really good place to make sure that we maintain that grassroots engagement. So anyway, that's kind of what Jill, I hope that covers it.
Yeah, did that answer your question, Les?
Well, a little clarification, that's very nice to hear about the website. On the website, will you list when the water land use committee meetings have been in the past? Like, you made it sound like they were common, but I haven't seen one for a year now, and so that's where you get the producer input, because you're promoting the executive. Well, we're the ones that are dealing with the salinity and the water, the drainage rights, not somebody sitting in Winnipeg. Don't we take it personal, Colin? But this is serious out here in these areas, and that's why we have these committees, is because you qualify to get on them, and then you represent to your best ability what should happen with some of these issues. And so now I don't know whether we need, as a committee, meet with the province, but I disagree strongly with the executive having the final say. That is supposed to be grassroots from the producers. So anyway, I'll listen for your explanation to that, maybe, Paul. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. So Les, when I said executive, I'm talking about Jill, Jake, and Kevin, our current executive members who are producers who are impacted by these issues as well. And so we do rely on their feedback, as well as other board members. I know for yourself, Scott is your board representative. So working through those individuals is definitely important. And as I mentioned earlier, anytime there's a policy issue or anything that's impacting you, our door is wide open, and we're happy to engage with everybody anytime. So Jill, anything to add?
Yeah. No, I think it's just important to know that then when we are meeting with government departments, and as Colin had mentioned, in the majority of our meetings, water management, drainage are key items that are being discussed in those meetings. And of course, we are bringing forward the concerns of the members. So when we're meeting with provincial and federal officials, as well as government department individuals. Of course, we have a great relationship with the Department of Agriculture and Brenda and her team. That we are discussing issues that are being brought forward from our members. So rest assured that grassroots information is flowing to the individuals that are making and the departments that are making certainly the decisions that are happening on the ground, and that when we are speaking to those individuals, it is on behalf of the producers in Manitoba, and certainly through our engagement through district meetings, your concerns definitely on drainage, as well as your district is not alone in concerns on water management here in the province. And certainly those items and key grassroots issues are being discussed and brought forward at that level. And when formal recommendations from KAP, if they're being made, Neil does reach out to the committee members associated with that issue for input, as well as reaching out to the commodity associations, who again get information from their members. So I think we leverage those relationships with our commodity associations, with members, and with industry in the province to make sure that those so that we are representing agriculture as a whole here in Manitoba when we're speaking to policy decisions and regulations that are in place here in Manitoba and federally. Are there any other questions from any other members here? Okay, seeing none, I guess we will thanks very much, Les, for your comments. Maybe if we, if we want to go offline, if there's something more specific, you can certainly reach out to me. You've got my phone number, and we can discuss further if you have something else to discuss. But thanks again for your comments and questions. So we'll go to District 1. We'll start with the districts to get through any issues. This is the time again to bring up something that's regional in your area. Again, making sure that we know what's going on around the province. If you haven't had a chance to pick up the phone and phone myself or Colin or the team, we'll start with District 1. Jake.
Yeah, thanks, Jill. District 1, obviously, kind of a poor forage and hay crop with a lack of moisture, sitting, probably 50 to 60% of annual precipitation now. Our farm's in about central of the district, and we've had just over an inch in the last week, so some much needed rains here. Everything's green, kind of holding on, flowering canola. We're definitely fortunate. Things seem to be holding on out here, even with a lack of moisture, but we've been getting some moisture here in the last week. So I think that's about it from our district. Thanks.
Great. District 2, Scott, are you still on the call? I had you. Scott, your iPhone is on here. Do you have comments from District 2? Is there anyone else from District 2? Les, did you have any comments on moisture and the crop this year in District 2 in your area? Okay, well, maybe go on to District 3. Colin Penner.
Yeah, I think it's pretty varied across District 3. We've got we're hurting for rain in certain spots, and other areas are crying for it to stop. So it is kind of one of those years where if you look at it, it will be kind of the average year, but it's not average for everyone. We've had a few significant hailstorms with some 100% damage on some crops. And so, yeah, weather's definitely one we're looking at. I think most guys are fairly cautiously optimistic. I think there's opportunity out there for a pretty significant crop.
Perfect. Thanks, Colin. Kevin Peters, District 4.
Yeah, I'm going to say our area is very similar. We've got a mixed bag of moisture. There's definitely some dry pockets. Fortunately, we did catch a bit of rain yesterday. Ranges from probably nothing. I know some of our fields had as little as 4 millimeters, and then going up to like 75 kind of thing around some areas if you caught the right cloud. Overall, I would say I think crops are average to above in the area. So things are looking pretty good right now.
Great, thank you for that. We'll go on to District 5. I don't see Jeneth on the call, but I do see Doug Martin. Did you have some comments, Doug?
Yeah, I can comment. Yeah, again, highly variable moisture conditions this year. It's if you're lucky, you hit the rain lottery. But on our farm and a lot of it in the, I guess the Interlake, Selkirk, East Selkirk, North Beausejour area, it's been incredibly dry. So certainly not used to that. So so anyway, I think it's looking so far like a slightly below average crop.
Thanks for that, Doug. And while I've got you on the call, there was a package that we will be sending out with the MCA's report, but was there anything in addition to that, or a highlight maybe from the MCA report from Manitoba Crop Alliance you wanted to mention? That way I'll maybe tackle you twice here while I've got you unmuted. Thanks.
Sure, that's good, Jill. Yeah, I'm on the executive of Manitoba Crop Alliance. Usually Pam's here or Lee, but I'll take their place today. So yeah, MCA is celebrating 5 years. So together, so we're partnering with Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada in Brandon for a celebration, celebrating 100 years of plant disease breeding. Yeah, and at the research farm there. So we celebrating 100 years with them on the August 7th. So that's just to highlight the benefits of AFAC's plant breeding program in Canada here. So again, MCA has a physical budget. We've just approved 25-26 budget, and our budget highlight is 7.3 million across our 6 major crops. We've allocated 72% of our budget towards research and production, which reflects our core commitment to deliver impactful farmer-driven research and extension services. And we're collaborating with the Grain Growers of Canada to advocate for agriculture research and recent discussion with AFAC Science and Technology Branch we've kind of wanting to know what's happening with the plant breeding going forward. So there's a transition from downstream to upstream research and infrastructure priorities. So additional meetings are to be planned. So that's something that's high on our priority list as far as advocacy. And just there's a mention about advanced payments program. Manitoba Crop Alliance is the most competitive administrator for agriculture and agri-food cash advance payment programs. So the interest-free program has been set at 250,000, and so anyone interested in getting a cash advance, we've got the best rates in the province. So anyway, with that, I'll leave if anyone has any questions or anything, just contact us, or you can ask me right now.
Great. Thanks very much, Doug. Thanks for taking the time. I know you're busy with meetings and all over the province there, your committee there.
Yeah,
so great.
No, my pleasure, Jill.
Great. Thank you. We'll go on to District 6. Brad Knight's on the call. Brad, did you have any comments particular from the District 6? You're unmuted, Brad, but I can't hear you right now. Sam, did you maybe want to make some quick comments on District 6? I see you're on the call. Sam? Okay, I'll quickly just comment then for District 6. Like everyone else, variable. I think the biggest thing in that central area is that we've unfortunately missed a lot of those rain clouds. I guess we've lost the lottery yet another year. We did get much needed, a little bit more rain here in the last day and a half, but crops, just like the rest of the southern Manitoba, I think we're looking at average crop And with lack of moisture along the, go up on the both sides of Lake Manitoba. I know that in both areas, struggling with really extreme low moisture levels affecting hay, pasture, and certainly crops. So definitely struggling again with lack of moisture in those areas around the lake specifically. We'll go on to District 7. We do have Tanner Olmsted. I don't want to throw you, put you on the spot here, Tanner, but was there anything specifically from out in your neck of the woods? I believe out by Carberry. Is there anything from District 7?
Probably the same as everybody else. We've I don't know, we've had dry spots and some people get rain. We did have a pretty good hailstorm. Yeah, other than that, not too much. We've been in a burn ban since May pretty well and still in it. So
Great.
but other than that, crops look probably a little below average, but not too bad.
Great. And welcome to the Advisory Council. I'm glad you were able to attend. Thank you for being here. Thanks.
Thanks.
District 8. Wyatt, did you have any comments from up, comments here from District 8? You just have to unmute yourself, Wyatt.
Hey, can you hear me there now?
Yes, perfect. Welcome, Wyatt.
Thanks. Good to be here. No, it's pretty well par for the course. We've had some areas getting good moisture, but then in that Hamiota, Oakner, kind of the more south part of District 8 is drier from what I've been hearing. Crops appear to be a little bit late, which is always a concern out our way, but other than that, I would say we're average to above average. So I think everybody's pretty optimistic with the exception of a few areas that are too dry. So
perfect. Thank you very much, and welcome to I guess your first Advisory Council meeting. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, good to be here. Thanks.
Great. District 9. I don't see Keith on the call, but I do see, is there anyone from District 9? Looking for a hands up. Okay, nothing from District 9. Shannon, District 10.
Hi. So our district is it's variable, but on the whole has been experiencing extreme low moisture, and we have a number of weather stations through one of the companies. And since spring, there are areas here that have received only a total of 1.25 inches total. We've been missing lots of the rains. The largest amount of total rainfall in this area seems to be around 2.5 inches total since spring. So production for hay is really poor. We have a lot of livestock producers concerned. Crops don't, hard to say. They might look pretty good from the road, but you get in there and it's a bit of a different story. And I think until harvest starts, it's going to be difficult to determine, but certainly below average, if not well below average. We have in the arm of Fisher declared a state of agriculture emergency, and we have will be forwarded to you sometime probably today, Jill and Colin, as well as AMM, and of course the government. And I know that other municipalities in our district, like Grahamdale, Coldwell, St. Laurent, have also declared states of emergencies related to the drought. I'm not sure about Armstrong. I think they might have. So yeah, it's been a very different year from last year where we had lots of moisture. Livestock producers are hauling water because dugouts are dry. So I guess we'll see what the next little bit shows.
Thanks, Shannon, for that, and look forward to chatting a little bit more about some of the drought issues as well up in your area. We'll go on to the commodity associations now. We've got Manitoba Oak Growers. Is there anyone from Oak Growers on the call? You just want to put up your hand. Pulse and Soybean Growers. Anybody from Manitoba Pulse? We did have Alex on the call earlier. It looks like he had to drop off. We'll go on. I know Manitoba Canola Growers, they are having their board meeting. Was there anyone else with additional information from the Manitoba Canola Growers? Might be quick. Prairie Fruit Growers Organization. Sam, did you have comments from fruit growers? Okay. Manitoba Seed Growers. I don't see anyone from Seed Growers Association. KPPA, Keystone Potato Producers. Manitoba Pork. Marg.
Yes, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
In our sector, I think producers are there's generally a positive atmosphere. There's a little bit of expansion and facility upgrading happening in bits and pieces. On the disease front, we did early in 2025 have one positive test for PEDV, which is always concerning to us. We credit a few things, but certainly including our strong emphasis on biosecurity over the last 4 or 5 years, that one case was isolated very quickly and at this point is already at a presumptive negative situation. We are aware that PED positive pigs are being brought to our processing facilities in Manitoba. So that continues to be a concern for us, and we try to keep producers alert of making sure that they continue to maintain strong biosecurity. And as no surprise to anyone, the whole trade file is taking a significant portion of our board and staff's time and attention. And there are continual meetings in person and online with our counterparts across Canada, and also a lot in the US. And it's always a surprise waking up every day wondering what new kink has been thrown into the mix for that day. But generally feeling positive. We're, of course, producers are always concerned if there are significant regions with drought, because that does have some impact on our feed cost supply, the cost of our feed supplies. So we're certainly grateful when rain falls in sufficient portion everywhere. So I'll leave it at that unless there's questions.
Great. Thank you very much, Mark. We'll move on to Dairy Farmers of Manitoba. I see Richard is on the call, as well as, did you have comments from Dairy Farmers, Richard?
I could maybe handle that one, Jill, if you
Oh,
want.
hi, Christy. Sorry, I missed your name here. Go ahead.
No
Sure.
problem. No problem. Like as far as crops go, our first cut of alfalfa and was probably not very good. Second cut is now coming in and is a little bit better, but still, I would say probably below average. So, we're keeping an eye on moisture levels for corn. That's our other very important crop. Being able to have enough rainfall to get those cobs filled is kind of in a critical time right now. So again, it's varied across the province, so it depends. Some people might be doing okay. Other people, further into the Inner Lake are a bit concerned with the moisture content out there. In terms of disease front, we have had a herd that we've been having issues with TB. So that's something that we are working with the CFIA and are hopeful that kind of remains contained just to the one herd. Again, as Marg mentioned, trade is an important thing that we're kind of keeping our eyes on. As of right now, we aren't really affected by that yet, but you know, as we've heard in the news, Donald Trump always seems to be mentioning dairy as something that he is very concerned about. So also we are watching that very closely. I've mentioned before in my updates about our milk concentration plant that we've been working on with the other Western provinces. And as of this week, they've been doing commissioning by putting milk through that plant. And so we're very close to being operational, which is really good. It's been a long time coming, so we're excited to see that come to fruition.
Perfect. Thanks, Christy. I hadn't looked further down on the list, so thanks for speaking up. Thanks. We'll go on to, I have Manitoba Bison Association. Is there someone on the call for bison? And we'll go to Manitoba Chicken Producers. Forage and Grassland Association. Harold with Manitoba Egg Farmers. Is there anything to highlight from Manitoba Egg?
Yes, Jill, thank you again. Maybe just a couple of things. We had a pretty good spring in terms of high path AI in Manitoba as well as Canada-wide. US had more outbreaks than we did. So the next time will be when the birds start flying south in the fall. And hopefully there isn't much, but that's one thing we're continually updating our biosecurity to try and reduce and manage that risk. The other thing that's happening, and this is Canada-wide through the the Animal Care Code, National Farm Animal Care Process, we have an updated code for egg farms right across Canada, which means that by January or July 1 of 2036, all conventional housing will be gone. So our industry is going through a complete rebuild or renovation between now and then. And we're well on the way to that. But what that means for us in Manitoba as well as elsewhere is our farmers are working with their municipalities, building codes, hydro, all of the steps to go through to rebuild their buildings. One thing that we're learning, which is an encouragement to all of us as farmers and groups, is your own succession plan, your relationship with your municipality. All of those things are key, because all of a sudden you have a building code thing that comes and you have a set timeline. And if your succession plan, if we haven't talked about it, if you don't know where the new barn is going to be, you add that to everything else, causes huge complications. The last thing I'll mention is last winter, the provincial government made a regulatory change to allow the sale of ungraded eggs at farmers markets. Prior to that time, you could sell eggs at farmers markets, but they had to be graded through a certified grading station. Our concern, and we've worked with the minister and continue to work with him and his staff to manage this, because the risk factor goes up as soon as you bring in the ungraded piece, because the other part of that is anybody that sells there is supposed to have a premise ID number. The vast majority of ungraded sellers there do not necessarily have an premise ID number. From the enforcement perspective, that is a huge risk, because if there is an outbreak of whatever it is, the key is to be able to find that farm, isolate it, all that kind of thing. So that's one thing that's concerning for us, and we're continue to work with the province to manage our way through that. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for highlighting that, Harold. go on to Manitoba Beekeepers Association.
Hey, Jill,
There's
thanks.
some-
Yeah, we interesting year for bees again. So we revised our winter loss up to, we're at 43%, which is the third highest loss in 2 decades. And then the highest loss we just had a couple years ago. So with everyone at the end of their egg stability, we're kind of in crisis mode right now. The 4-year average loss is also 42%, which previously 2 decades ago, it used to be 20%. So if we continue the next 4 years from the last 4 years, commercial beekeeping is dead in the water as an industry in Manitoba. So a couple of things to highlight. I wish the canola guys were here. I've seen several guys spraying in the middle of the day with canola in full bloom. It'd be good to get that spraying done before 9 a.m. It is detrimental to all the bees, no matter what you're spraying, that they bring that back to the beehive and it compounds with everything else going in there. So it's not, when we're having a bad year, it's really bad to see them spraying in full bloom. On the water subject, because it is dry and a lot of the water drainages are all disappearing, the bees need water to cool the hives from high humidity. So we're also having to haul water to all locations. And if the natural bees are suffering from this, natural pollinators, as water disappears, are also suffering. So everything in conjunction is kind of crisis right now for the commercial bee industry in Manitoba.
Great, thanks, Mike, for that update and great reminder to producers kind of on that spray front. So we'll go to we've got Love Day Mushrooms and Manitoba Turkey Producers. Is there anyone on the call for either of those groups? And then Manitoba Nursery Landscape Association. Is there anyone on the call from nurseries? I don't see any hands.
No, but Jill, I'm back if you want. Quick.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll squeeze you in, and then we just have forage and sheep after that. So go ahead, Sam.
Okay, for the most part, I think strawberries are wrapped up or just now wrapping up. Our early crops are all done. So there's a few people still working on Saskatoons or raspberries, but otherwise made it through the season. Everyone's looking at renovation and whatnot now. We are also really worried about protecting our pollinators. I don't know about everyone else, but I noticed it was quieter this year and really paying attention to where and when we spray. So hopefully everyone had a good season. Some people got more or less water, and we really noticed it where people didn't have irrigation set up.
Great. Thanks, Sam. And did I miss anything from District 6 from the district at all?
No, I think you covered it. Where's Chuck? He's usually good at that.
He's Manitoba canola growers have a board meeting today, so we're missing him from the conversation today. And lastly, I guess, was there anyone from either Forage Seed or Manitoba Sheep Association? Okay, seeing no hands come up, we do have, I'm conscious of everyone's time. We're a little bit past here, set by 7 minutes, but certainly, was there any other business or comments from anyone before I ask for adjournment from the group today? Okay, I don't see any hands up, so I guess I will ask for a motion to adjourn. From
I can
someone.
make that motion. Kevin Peters,
Like
District
Kevin?
4.
And seconder? And who's, oh, sorry, I can hardly hear you. Is that Christy Lane? Okay, Christy Lane. Perfect. Thank you very much for everyone attending, and have a great rest of the season. Thank you. Bye-bye.